I once woke up in the middle of the night and I distinctly saw a little girl sitting on the end of my bed.
You are listening to the Shoot Your Shot podcast with Lindsay and Tim. Trigger warning. This episode contains conversations that include ghostly figures, haunted wedding venues, and spooky tales of love. You must subscribe to ward off all evil spirits. This is your final warning.
Hello, happy Monday, and welcome back to the Shoot Your Shot podcast. I'm Lindsay Coulter, and this is Timothy Muza, and we are here with a special episode, the third installment, second installment of our spooky season, and we are so excited to be here. Shoot Your Shot is a photography podcast where we answer your hot takes, your spooky stories for this episode, but any stories that you want to share with us about the photography industry, about events, anything related to photography, we are here. We take your DMs, your voice notes. You can call in like an old school radio show into our Instagram messages and we'll respond to you. We'll put you on the pod. Today, we are doing our second iteration where we are sharing what we consider to be and what you consider to be spooky stories.
I can't wait to jump into this. I've been looking forward to this ever since we had to take apart the set mostly and repurpose it so as to not destroy our beautiful set behind us here. And you did a gratitude episode last week. So I'm super excited to jump back into this. And thank you as well to all of you listening, watching, enjoying the show. We're excited to have you here and we're excited to share some of your stories from the spooky world of wedding and portrait photography. And
if you missed it, last week we did a special Canadian Thanksgiving episode where we shared some things that you guys are grateful for, some things that we're grateful for. I think it's a nice little pause in the middle of what is an absolutely crazy photography, wedding, and event season.
At the time of recording, we're going into a hunter's full Blastoise moon. What is it? What's the deal with this moon?
So actually tonight is a full moon, Aries, which I am an Aries sun sign. So if you're an Aries and you're feeling like howling at the moon like a little werewolf that you are, you should get it out. Full moons are really great for a number of things. So this is such a niche thing that I'm sure most people don't know this about me, but I actually took a course on the moon. It's like an astrological course, but specifically related to the moon. And most people who are feminine leaning, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a woman or you identify as a woman, but if you're a feminine leaning person, instead of your sun sign, that's what most people know, your moon sign is actually the thing that maybe tells you more about yourself and who you are as a person. So men or people that are more masculine leaning are generally more impacted by the sun.
Interesting.
And people that are more feminine leaning are generally more impacted by the moon. So my moon sign is a Virgo and my rising is a Virgo. We don't have enough time to get into that today,
but the moon we have and we're experiencing.
But Aries, but yes. So for this full moon, and for really all full moons, it's a really, really great time to get rid of anything that's not serving you. So right now, if you're feeling like you are carrying a burden that you don't want to be carrying anymore, whether that be in your business, your relationships, your personal life, a full moon is like such a good time to rid yourself of it. You can go for a walk during the full moon. You can do some breathing, maybe some yoga. I find like a good physical release is a really good way to like actually get rid of that. You can literally go out into a bush and scream. Just be prepared for the cops to come.
Or to the subway if you're in a city.
Go to the subway. I feel like it's a good time to connect with nature, but if you want to go into the subway and scream, it's probably not that abnormal.
And I do mean Subway sandwiches. They love them.
They actually love it. Mr. Sub specifically really loves it.
Jared will show up.
But if you're going to be listening to this on Monday or later, so you're a couple of days past the full moon. But as the full moon starts to wane, you may find your energy reserves start to deplete because the moon literally energizes us. So if you find your energy reserves starting to deplete by the time that you're listening to this, that's okay. Take it easy. Take it easy breezy, my guy. It's it's tiring to be a human being on the planet.
It's exhausting. Speaking of being exhausted, we're kind of in the thickest of thick for wedding season right now.
Thick with so many C's.
Coming to you with new episodes of the podcast. So we just want you to know that we appreciate you.
And we do this because, you guys are here and we've actually, in the earlier days of the podcast, I think Actually, no, in our old podcast, we missed episodes here and there. We haven't really done that with this one.
No, we've been consistent.
Kudos to you, Tim.
What's up?
But that was so unlike us.
If you're watching on YouTube,
we just fist bumped, and I hated it. Actually,
you hate it.
Actually, I kind of liked it. I'll workshop it and see how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's been very consistent. We've been great at keeping this train on the tracks, making sure we're showing up for our community, and you guys.
And it's really nice when you guys. We actually did have one episode that went up a couple of hours late, and we had somebody message us being like, "Is something wrong?" And we had technical issues. We had to take it down and put back up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, people are actually listening, and it's like such a real treat. And we love starting our week off with you on Mondays. We love getting the DMs from you, comments on our Instagram being like, hey, listen to this was funny. The YouTube episode is the best place for you to comment. Absolutely. It helps other people find us. It helps the old algorithm. So thank you for being here.
We also put a lot of effort into the visual aspects of this show.
Do we ever?
We got a multicam thing going on here, multiple cams. Make it nice for you. Make it nice for us. Let's go into our first story and our only story for this episode.
Tim,
it's a big one.
One thing I do love about you is that you consistently forget the 8-ball. One thing I love about you is that you are consistent in your forgetfulness of.
We start every episode at some point by rolling the magic mystical 8-ball that we have here on our set. It's a full moon. Typically, I know I talk to a lot of people who work in like service industries and people who work in like
yes.
Officers. It's notorious for being a weird night. If you work in a hospital, you know what I'm talking about.
If you've got kids, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, animals get a bit weird, bit squirrely on full moon nights. Man, I feel like we should center our question around the full moon.
I agree.
It's the spooky season, and we need to monopolize on the old.
Okay, so maybe the question should be, is the full moon going to allow us to rid ourselves of whatever we want to get rid of today?
Love that for us.
So, Tim, I want you to think of something that you want to get rid of. I'll be thinking of something that I want to unburden myself with. And I'm going to pray to the moon and the magic 8-ball that we're getting rid of those things today.
Okay. We're not going to speak into existence. We're just
I'm going to speak mine into existence. I want to be done my painting job. So
okay.
If you guys listened to last week, I was like in the thick of a painting thing. I actually had to use brown dry shampoo to get the paint out of my hair for this episode.
That's great. Can't tell.
Thanks so much. So are we going to unburden ourselves?
And you, dear listener, you can make one too.
Yes. From this full moon. Let's see it.
Outlook good.
Oh, good.
That's excellent.
Okay.
There's a pile of socks that don't fit myself or Kelly and don't have any partners at the end of our bed. We need to get rid of that. So
unburden yourself. That's such a nice one. I like that you and I both have really tangible ones. Yeah. Like it could be like you want to unburden yourself of like the pressure to impress people, the need to be liked by everyone. No, we're literally like getting rid of socks.
Get rid of socks, yeah.
I believe in, you know what? You can do that literally today. That's so amazing.
It's going to happen tonight. So let's get to our first and only caller for this episode. Josh Sawyer comes to us from Instagram. He's got a bit of a ghoulish ghost story about a wedding venue.
And wait, is it Josh Sawyer or Sour? Sorry, Josh.
Sorry.
We're not really sure.
If it's Sour, I'm sorry. If it's Sawyer, I'm sour. Okay.
Let's hear from Josh.
Let's do it. Camera 4, hit it.
Hey guys. So file this under haunted venues for the podcast. So there's this venue that I shoot at often in Kingston, and it's the ceremony and the reception takes place at a hall outside of a very old fort from like the late 1700s, early 1800s, a prominent point of War of 1812 kind of organization for British troops. And so it's like this old limestone fort on a hill overlooking the city, and every wedding we take the couple in there after it closes to the public. So it's like me, the couple, and the coordinator kind of just wandering around this old fort by ourselves around sunset, and it's just so awesome. It's a really cool spot to shoot. I love shooting there. I can get creative and kind of explore where I can. Anyways, my story takes place not during a wedding, but during a haunted walk. So every year they do this thing called Fort Fright, and they have like in the old dry moat, they have like haunted house kind of scenes and like character actors that kind of try to scare you, and you just walk through when it's pitch black, and it's just so fun. Honestly, they do an excellent job. It's a ton of fun, and every year we go. But one year we went and we did a haunted walk that happens after Fort Fright, which was so awesome. And it was like they had the creepy music playing, and they had like all the sets up and stuff. So it really added to the ambiance of the haunted walk. And so through the haunted walk, you go through like the walls and the barracks and the kitchen and the blah, 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 all throughout the fort. And we were in this room. It was a tight room, kind of circular, made of limestone. And they had a cannon facing inside the dry moat through this window. And then they had like these little holes where guys, I guess, would put their guns through and shoot people that got into the moat. And our group was in there. The tour guide was talking about some gruesome story or whatever. And everybody started walking back up the wooden stairs to get out of this room. And it was kind of like just me lingering and some other guy. And in my left ear, all I heard is, "Get out." And it was loud enough that I visibly said, "What?" And then it sounded like whoever said this was within inches of my ear. And all I hear is, "Get out." And I looked towards the guy that was kind of like 6 feet away. I was like, "Hey man, did you just hear that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did." I was like, "That was strange. Let's go." So we kind of just caught up to the group, and we kind of told them like what we just heard. And I was like, "Yeah, no, whoever said that was literally in my ear. It wasn't outside of the window. It wasn't through the little gun holes or anything. It sounded like whoever said that was within inches of my head." So I tell that story to the couples when we go through the fort, and I've told it to all the coordinators at the fort, and they all have their kind of ghost stories too, because a lot of them, there's a bunch of like actors that play old-timey soldiers and old-timey people that play it up for the public. And I guess something they get to do is like stay overnight, and they all have crazy stories about hauntings and cool ghost things and stuff. But yeah, it's strange because I'm not a ghost guy. I don't believe in ghosts. This stuff doesn't really faze me at all, but I can't really explain what happened that night. It was quite something else, and I've racked my brain about like, okay, who's playing a trick on me or whatever, but I really can't explain it. And so yeah, that's my haunted venue story. Love shooting there, shoot there often. All right, cheers guys, bye.
Why, y'all?
What? No, that's actually, I got chills. I got genuinely chilled.
When I was listening to it and putting it together for the show, I was like alone at the studio.
No.
Like, oh, I'm not going to.
I'm going to go home now.
I'm not going to go check in on the studio around the corner. It's fine. I'll just stay here in the main room with all the light.
Terrifying.
Spooky, wookie.
How do you shoot there?
I don't know how you could. I guess you wouldn't do a lot after night. After the sun has gone down and the moon has come up. Long ago, someone's left the cup. I mean, the fact that he tells everyone. Thank you, Josh, for sharing this story, by the way. The fact that you tell everyone, I think, helps. Because if that was me, I'd want to let everyone know that this happened.
Yeah.
I felt this way. And be a bit like cheap and free therapy.
Yes.
To, like, get it out and be like, this is
real. But at the same time, I have a question. Josh, you said you don't believe in ghosts.
You have to now, dude.
Who do you think that was? That was a ghost?
Yeah, truly.
Somebody... Like, and I appreciate that you said it was far enough away. It wasn't, because my first thought was like, it's not just coming from like a gun hole. And like, listen, I firmly believe in spirits. I believe that you guys just heard me talking about how I believe in the moon so aggressively. So you know that I'm a spooky person just by nature, 12 months of the year. I believe that every piece of energy that's ever existed on this planet currently exists to this day, and not just I shouldn't say on this planet, in the universe. Yeah. And I don't think that's a spooky thing. I'm pretty sure that's like a science thing that energy
cannot be destroyed. Yeah. Change states.
And sure, like maybe we change into carbon at some point or whatever, right? But like, I have always wondered what happens to people when they pass on. And from my own experience, I can tell you without a single second of doubt that there is a period after people pass where they are very much still present, not just in our lives as memories, but like very much like like their spirit is here with us, and I know that. And I think that some people, have you ever noticed that kids or people that are more open to it hear from spirits more often, or sense things that they aren't expecting?
That's a common thing with people in hospice.
Yes.
People will say that people going through the process of dying will start to see loved ones closer to their days, like their end of days. Like they'll start to witness people from their past who are moved on, dead, come into their room and like interact with them. And that's like a documented thing. People who work in hospice have these experiences. They've seen people, go through these I don't want to say visions, but they go through these experiences of seeing their loved ones come back, and it's interesting, right?
And I feel like if you're going to, I forget what it was called, but like these walks where you go through this, you're probably more open to this as well. You're opening yourself up to whatever experiences might happen. And I like to think of it as like a door. So if you are opening the door on your end, and maybe the spirit is opening the door on their end, maybe that spirit is opening the door and saying, hey, welcome in. And it's like a nice thing. And maybe the spirit is opening it in saying, get out of here. Yeah. This is not a good place for you. You don't want to linger here too long or whatever. Whoa. Yeah. That is a good one.
That's a really good one. Thank you so much, Josh.
Have you ever had any spooky experiences, Tim?
Not like anything incredibly memorable or like worth mentioning. No, I've had weird feelings, I think, in the back of my mind when I'm in a space where I'm like, ooh, I don't feel alone here. I feel like there's someone in the room with me or someone watching me. But nothing that's like truly documented in the way that Josh experienced here, where there's someone whispering in my ear.
No, that's really specific.
We're going to Portugal in a couple of days. At the time of recording, we'll be in Portugal. At the time you're listening to this, we'll be in Portugal enjoying tarts and the sunshine and the Way of North Conference. But my parents told me that they went to Portugal a couple of years ago, and they told me an experience they had where they were sleeping in a turret on the coast, and my dad heard someone. This is at night when they were sleeping. It's like this loft kind of situation where they're above the kitchen area and the main space because it's a turret. It's like a giant cylinder. And then he heard someone downstairs and saw the light turn on, and he looked over, and my mom was next to him. She was like, "Okay, someone else is here." And they both had that experience. They're both like, "Should we go?" Like
downstairs? There's like a stranger.
Someone's in the room. Someone's in the house. So whether or not that's like housekeeping at 2:00 in the morning, or the fact that it's a turret and there's faulty lighting and probably some weird knob and tube wiring and electrical, but he claims that it's a spirit.
He felt something.
He heard something. He felt like it was a
spirit,
not of this realm. So
wow,
wild. Would you tell your couple? What's your standard for?
Would I tell my
couple? If
couple?
You go through an experience where you're like in a room that you shoot weddings at, or at a space, and you're commonly there, and let's say you go out to do some evening shots, you have off-camera flash, you want to do some cool cool lighting
you
effects.
Would really have to feel out your client. Okay. I think because so speaking of the Ancaster Mill that we've shot at before, right, like there's spooky ghost stories there. First of all, I know that a lot of people that are very religious might have some serious qualms with this, and what I want to like say something that's going to make them feel really uncomfortable, first of all, with me, and like questioning my judgment. Because also, like, when you tell somebody a ghost story, depending on the person on the receiving end, they might be like, so this person is insane. This person's literally insane. Like you even just talking about like horoscopes and the moon and stuff. Like I'm like quite comfortable talking about that because I feel like whatever, that's just like who I am. But I think when you start talking about things, you can either make people feel uncomfortable or you can freak them out if they truly do believe in it. I think if it was me and I was the bride and somebody told me this, I would be so down. And I'm sure Josh like reads his clients and knows who they are. I also think if you're going to get married at an old fort
from War of 1812,
you have to know the juju is off, man. The juju is really off. Like it's probably an incredible venue. I've actually been to the one he's referring to. Yeah. Okay. As a child. We did a lot of like random.
We did too.
Like my parents, I guess it's just a thing you did in the 90s. We didn't have iPads.
Let's drive to New Brunswick and go to the fort.
My parents would take day trips to Quebec. Like not like maybe not literally, but like literally we would take day trips that were 6 hours away.
Yeah.
It was insane. My parents were wild. My dad just loved to drive. But we have been to many weird like historic monuments and things like that. So I think that when you go, you have the very obvious sensation of like, hundreds, if not thousands of people have died here. So that's weird. So I think if you're getting married at one of these venues and then your photographer says, by the way, here's my ghost story, I feel like most of those clients are probably like, that checks out.
Yeah, we suspected that.
That absolutely checks out for me. I think that makes sense. So, yeah, I would lean towards yes. I would tell them. I would just like question who my client is and like what a good rapport, if we have a great rapport or not. I actually had a friend in grade school.
Okay.
Her name was Lizette, and her family did not celebrate Halloween at all. And that was my first like understanding that like, oh, people have like totally different perspectives on spooky season.
Right.
Because here we are like, you know, I was dressed up like a butterfly. Like I didn't see any, I didn't even understand that there was an alternate perspective here on spooky season. And her family was quite religious. I actually don't know what denomination or what that was. Okay. But I just know that like once I did ask her mom why, her mom said because the devil is involved in Halloween and you're opening.
LDS. Is that LDS?
I think it is. Okay. Yeah. But like you're opening a gate to the devil, basically. I personally am not really. I don't think I believe in the devil.
Sure.
I would say, listen, we're getting really philosophical, but I would say I believe in light and an absence of light.
Sure. Yeah. Negative and positive energies. We'll go with that. Maybe.
I wouldn't even say negative. I just think an absence of it, a complete void.
A black hole.
Yes, which like I would say like, you know, serial killers. Okay. That's a complete void of light.
Right.
It's just nothing.
Yeah.
Evil, I don't know.
Okay.
A complete void of light.
Do you think that these ghosts that we interact with do you think they have an evilness to them, or do you think it's like the Casper version of like unfinished business when it comes to, you know, their time still being here on Earth as opposed to moving on to whatever's next? I
would say the spirits that are like that some people might consider as being evil are probably bored and they're stuck.
Yeah, all right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
So when Taylor and I first started dating, I actually had, for a brief period of time, moved back in with my parents. And I had never lived in a basement before. I had always had like a main floor room, but being that I was like a 21-year-old woman, my parents were like, I guess you can have the basement.
Great. Big basement, small basement, what are you talking here?
It was the entire length of the house.
Oh wow.
I had my own kitchen. My parents were very generous. When I moved, I was living with some girls. It ended really poorly, and they were trying to like help me, you know, get back on my feet without making me feel like a total bum that I was moving back into my parents' house, like into my childhood room or whatever. Even though it wasn't my childhood, but anyways. It was the entire basement. It was very cold. It always had like a weird vibe.
Basements do though, don't they? I mean, I've always freaked out by
basements. Always have had a weird vibe.
And the light, and you have less than a second to get to the top.
You gotta run. You're running.
And then there was a time when the basement wasn't finished, and I thought hands would grab me from underneath the gaps in the stairs. Ugh.
I once woke up in the middle of the night, and I distinctly saw a little girl sitting on the end of my bed.
Oh,
distinctly.
Did you have sleep paralysis where like you could not move, like you were just?
So I've had sleep paralysis before, which also like literal sleep paralysis, where I'm actually asleep but awake. Yes. Like, have you ever had that?
I've only heard about it on podcasts and read about it.
I've had it a few times. The first time I had it would have been when I was still living with my parents, and I had wisdom teeth taken out, and I was on medication, and I was fully aware and alert in my brain, and I could not bring myself to get up, and it was terrifying. It was like my body wasn't listening when my brain was saying, "Okay, we're gonna move now," and I couldn't, and it was so scary. Wow. So I often, like, you know, anytime that you have like any of these sort of paranormal experiences, you're always going to gaslight yourself and be like, "Was that real?" And maybe it's not gaslighting, but you're just questioning like, how real was that? But this one scared me so much that I called Taylor and I made him come and get me. This was like early days. He must have thought I was an absolute loony bin. Because it was probably, I don't even think it was that late, actually. I feel like it was maybe midnight or something. I'd gone to bed a couple of hours before, which is just the exact time when your brain would start playing tricks on you or whatever. Yeah. But then it happened again.
Okay.
And that to me was literally when I was like, so I'm not living here anymore.
Tell me the story. Tell me what happened.
The next time was literally the same thing. I woke up in the middle of the night. This girl was sitting on the edge of my bed, but she started scooting closer to me.
If you're watching on YouTube.
And I was like, I'm going to have to get out of here now. Yeah. So then I slept with the light on for a while. My parents still live there, which is so crazy to me because I did tell them about this. I mean, like, what are they going to do? Move? But I would have moved. I've moved for less. I moved because I found silverfish in my bathroom once. So, I mean,
very common.
Like a super common bug that just like exists in bathrooms. And I found that and I was like, so we're going to have to find a new apartment. That's crazy.
I was living in
But you think I'm not moving because there's a little girl living in my basement? I'm going to have to move.
It's fine. Yeah. Silverfish, though, give me the fuck.
$500,000 later and we moved. Yeah.
Murder house I lived in, I'm remembering now, on Aaron Street in Kitchener.
Yeah.
This was a long time ago. And I found out about it because my friend Andrew was like, oh, you live at the murder house. I'm like, come on, man, get out of town. He's like, no, my parents used to live up the street. That's the murder house. I'm like, tell me about the murder house then, please.
While you were living in it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's rough.
Cool. And I couldn't tell anyone until we moved out because I was like, I'm not going to ruin this for all of
Well, yeah, I did ruin it. So
apparently there was a vagrant in the park wanting to get out of the cold. He came to the house. He knocked on the door. The owner was like, sure, man, you can come in. Slept on the couch, woke up, murdered the guy, stole his car, drove to the border, was caught. And then,
this kind man let an unhoused person in their home.
This was like in the 70s, I want to say.
Did you find the news article? Was it real?
No.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Anything before, like anything that predates. It's
probably on microfiche somewhere.
Like The Record.
Yes.
Then you have to literally go to like the library and find, and I've done that, but that's like really time consuming.
But then one time I was in the basement doing laundry and there was a crow for some reason just chilling in the basement, which I'm told is like a spiritual thing.
Yeah, like a
giant crow was just chilling. I'm like, oh, and there's no open windows. I'm like, I'm going to open this window and then leave.
Do you want to hear the worst one?
Please.
Speaking of basements and dead things, this is the worst one. And
okay.
You guys are actually going to think, wow, Lindsay's on drugs. But I have people that were there, my parents included, that can confirm this is a thing.
Got it.
So actually, speaking that the area of the wedding venue that we were talking about before, where there were like hangings, it was like a big area during the war.
1812, the Bloody Assize, they called it. Ancaster Arms.
And along this area in Oakville, it's like also just a big area during that time because it was a waterfront. So there's like lots of huge houses that I would refer to as mansions.
Yes.
And years ago, I would say, so I was probably 13 or 14 when this happened. Family friends of ours were helping renovate one of these really big homes on the waterfront.
Yeah.
And their friend was the realtor on it. And they were like, oh, like you guys are in the area. Again, probably one of these random days that my parents and I were just out for a drive. And they said, oh, do you want to come by and see this like incredible house that we're working on? Because it was like the owners weren't living there. It was being fully renovated while they were away.
Right.
And they said, do you want to come and see this house? It's like really incredible. So we go and look through it. And actually, I feel like maybe it was being sold. So I feel like no one was even living there anyways. I'm just trying to clarify why they were letting random people come through the house while they're renovating it. So we go through this house and we're there with our friends Sally and Lisa and my mom and dad. And Sally has always been known to be a very spiritual person. And she said to me from a young age, like, you have the thing that I have. Like she's just a very spiritually in touch person. And she's never shut that part of herself down, which I think probably is why spirits feel comfortable like talking to her.
Right.
Man, I'm really showing my hand here on how weird I am.
It's Halloween.
And we are walking through this house and we get to the basement and Sally and I both like immediately sort of bristle. And I was like, something weird is going on in this basement. Yeah. The basement was unfinished. The rest of the house was like in the middle of being finished. It was beautiful, but the basement was like cold and damp, like a cold cellar.
Right.
So obviously you sort of bristle just physically because it's cold and gross. But we go down into this cellar and I was like, I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin. I was like, I literally have to get out of here. I cannot be here.
Get me out of here.
This is so brutal. Anyways, we leave. Sally also had the same feeling, like something's something's off here. Vibes are really off.
Right.
Do we not find out that someone had been murdered in that house, in that basement?
Good grief.
A girl. Years ago, and it was in the news. There was actual evidence of this happening.
Yep.
And to this day, I should actually follow up with them and find out if my memory changed this or if this is an actual thing. I think that they found remains during the process. Either that something led me to believe like very, very firmly that this was this girl. And I can't remember if it was that they found remains at that time or that they had found remains before, but in the basement.
Wow.
And it's just weird. I don't know. I think if you pay attention to it, there's probably far more of it.
Oh.
Far more of it.
Dude, we drive by, those patches of like forest that are like bordering a lot of farmland.
Oh yeah, I always think there's got to be a body in there.
This is the game that Kelly and I play. We'll drive by. Like, Kelly, how many bodies do you think are buried in that patch of woods? And it's always at least one. And it's not because we're morbid people. We just think like over the period of time that this land has been populated by human beings, which is hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions at this point, people have died in almost every corner of
course
the land that we occupy, just because statistically that's what's going to happen. So
that is what's going to happen.
Hauntings be real. The ghouls be out there, and I'm kind of here for it.
I am kind of here for it as well. We're actually going with our friends, the Macks, Jeff Mack and Michelle Mack, wedding planner and officiant team extraordinaires. We are going to a haunted, it's called the Keg Mansion, which I think is very funny because there's a keg restaurant on the ground floor. So like that totally makes sense. But downtown Toronto for Jeff's birthday, which is really random in a couple of weeks. So unfortunately we're missing like peak spooky season for it.
Yeah,
but
it's fine.
Apparently, do you want to hear this ghost story? Did you look it up at all?
I did look it up. I watched a couple YouTube videos about people surveying the area.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be a bad story because I don't actually remember all the details. We haven't gone to it yet. But apparently, there was a woman that lived in this home, and she had a housekeeper. And I was reading the story, and I was like, are we just glossing over the fact that these two are clearly in a relationship?
Confirmed bachelorette.
Like, confirmed bachelorettes. So anyways, the owner, the old woman that owned the home, died. And then shortly thereafter, the housekeeper, her friend, in the most giant air quotes of all time, died by suicide in the home.
Yeah.
And apparently there's still a hole in the floor from where she jumped off of the banister. Jeez. So why are we going to this? I don't know. There's something clearly wrong with us.
40th birthday, that's why.
Yeah, there's nothing like a 40th birthday to bring you to a scary mansion where people have died.
Yeah.
And there's a keg. So if you'd like to go and get a keg-sized steak and salad and a Caesar.
That sounds great. We're also staying at the Fairmont.
Which is definitely haunted.
Definitely spooky. So,
most definitely haunted.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, so I'm really quite excited for it. We have a real spooky season ahead of us. Josh, thank you so much for submitting this spooky story. I do want to hear if at any point anything weird happens. Like, honestly, if I were you and I was in this situation and my camera gear started acting up, which like it does every day, I would be like, oh my gosh, it's the ghosts again. It's the ghost of the Canon R6 Mark II.
What a lovely scapegoat in case something does fuck up. You can be like, hey, it's not my fault, guys. The reason that the
I didn't put batteries in
is because the F0 is the aperture of ghosts.
The ghost literally took my batteries out of the camera.
I want to tell you.
The ghosts took my memory cards and formatted them mid-shoot. What was I supposed to do? What was I to do? What's a girl to do?
It's out of my hands.
I would say that was probably one of the prisoners of war that got captured down in the barracks. I'm just saying words now. I don't know anything about war. Hates canon.
Josh, thank you so much for writing us in. It's a bit of a short one this week. We're excited to bring you another haunting, ghoulish story that I will read here on the podcast.
I'm so excited.
Halloween episode. We're also going to be in full costumes. Won't tell you what those are. That's a surprise for you to see and for us to know. Lindsay, we did it. We episoded.
Thank you guys for being here for this quick little holiday Halloween spooky edition. We will see you next week for the penultimate Halloween edition of the Shoot Your Shot podcast.